evening. Is this working? We're good? Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the special Planning and Zoning Commission meeting here on Wednesday, October 22nd for the City of Lockport. Call this meeting to order, and we'll start with Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kathy, would you like to do attendance roll call?
Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
Thank you, Kathy. On to the approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the August 13th, 2025 Plan and Zoning Commission?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Giorgetti. Is there a
Second.
Second by Peters. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes, Kathy. Next item is public hearing, case number 2025-003, variance to reduce the corner side yard setback for a privacy fence for 15947 Orchid Lane. Would ask, is there a motion to open this public hearing?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion by Calderon,
Second.
second by Quinn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Lance, would you like to present the...
Yeah, I'll just do a quick introduction. Alyssa is going to make the presentation tonight, but this is a fence variance for a corner side yard location on Orchid Lane, which is down off of Gava Road in the Parkside Estates subdivision. And with that, I'll turn it over to Alyssa.
Alrighty. So Lance covered the title and what the case is about. Next, we have just some facts. So once again, this is a variance request to allow for a 6-foot privacy fence to extend to the property line. Our zoning ordinance regulates for a fence that is located in a corner side yard. It must be open design, not exceed 4 feet in height, and be located a minimum of 15 feet or 1/2 the distance between the house and the property line, whichever is less. Fences shall not be located less than 1 foot from the corner side lot, from the corner side yard lot line. Some background information on this case. Our applicant is Rory Subler. I apologize if I mispronounced that. And we've got our location, our PIN, our parcel size. Zoning at this property is R1 single family residential. Surrounding zoning land uses to the northwest east is R1 single family, and to the south is unincorporated. Here is an aerial photo of the site location. And then we have some photos on the site as well. This is a plat survey and also marks where the fence is proposed to be on the line or on the lot. Now we'll go through the findings of fact. So for the first section, the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the conditions allowed by the regulations of the district in which it is located. This property could yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under regulations allowed in the R1 district. The proposed variation will not merely serve as a convenience to the applicant, but will alleviate some demonstrable and unusual hardship that will result if the strict letter of the regulations were carried out, which are not generally applicable to the property within the same district. So the property to the south is unincorporated. The property owner, the current property owner for the site we're looking at, was aware of the adjacent lot's condition at the time of purchase. The changes may present a unique condition along the rear property line, but they do not rise to the level of a legal hardship. The proposed 15-foot extension of the privacy fence would have little to no impact in mitigating the poor visual character of adjacent property, and the expansion is intended to increase the amount of enclosed rear yard space, offering a convenience to the applicant. And next, the alleged hardship has not been directly created by a person presently having a proprietary interest in the premises. The unincorporated property to the south is the alleged hardship. The applicant has not had any hand in the creation of the alleged hardship. The proposed variation will not be material, detrimental to the public welfare, or injurious to other property or improvements in the neighborhood. This proposed variation could negatively affect the visual character and openness of the neighborhood. It will not be material detrimental to the public welfare. The proposed variation will not impair an adequate supply of light and air adjacent to the adjacent property, substantially increase congestion in the public streets, increase the danger of fire, or endanger the public safety. The proposed variation will likely not endanger public safety. Fern Drive does not currently pose any potential traffic concerns, as it is a dead end right now. Future annexation and development of the southern property could eventually create a danger to public safety via lack of sight lines. The proposed variation will not alter the essential character of the locality. The essential character of the locality will not be altered. The proposed variation is in harmony with the spirit and intent of this chapter. The variation related to the fence does not align with the current zoning ordinance. So now that we've gone through the findings of fact for this case, we bring to the commissioners a motion of whether or not they find this variance to be acceptable. So they may make a motion to approve the corner side yard setback for the fence from 15 feet to 0 feet based on the findings of fact in this commission. They can also make a motion to approve a 6-foot privacy fence from a 4-foot open design fence in the corner side yard based on the findings of fact of this commission.
Good.
That's our staff report.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, Lance. Would the applicant like to speak to the variance request?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rory Subler. I live at 15947 Orchid Lane. I appreciate you hearing me out this evening. When I purchased this property, the tree line behind the house was dense and you could not see the structure behind me. Shortly after I closed on the home, they began clearing that tree line hot and heavy. They cleared out their side until they kind of got into my area and then just left all the brush. If you were to go by there now, it's a fairly big eyesore. There's side-by-sides and quads and pickup trucks and various recreational vehicles that operate at all hours of the night. If you were to pull up a Google Earth map, you can see that there's a track or trail that runs directly along my south property line. And much of this variance that I'm asking for is I want this 6-foot fence all the way down my south property line. Because if I'm standing at the corner of my garage, or if you held my feet to the fire and kept me at that 15-foot setback, there's going to be a clear visual line that I can see right into their property. and I'm going to be able to see and hear those vehicles, and the lights when they, come swinging around their trail are going to shine into my property. It's not what I signed up for when I bought this property. I've lived in Lockport since 2010. I want to continue to live here. I want a safe place for my family, for my kids, for my pets, and part of that safety is putting in a privacy fence and having it be 6 feet and privacy. There's really no reason I can see why it would be not allowed. The street terminates at my property line, and it doesn't intersect with another street. In order for the street to continue, my neighbor to the south would have to sell his property, then his neighbor, their property, then the neighbor, their property, and I know these people. There's no intention to sell. And in the event they did sell and all of that happened, then I'm fine with the city coming along and saying, hey, you need to move your fence now. But at this time, it's for my own quality of life and safety, and to make it a nicer place to live. I could plant trees there and accomplish the same thing, but let's face it, that's going to take 10 years for those trees to fill in. And I like to be fully transparent with everybody. And in the event that I do have to transition to a 4-foot fence, that is exactly what I will do, is just plant a wall of trees. And I really don't want to wait for that privacy. That's not going to help with the things like when my neighbor's pet runs into my yard or any of those things. So it's about safety, it's about visual aesthetics, and I think anybody can see by looking at the proposal I put together, I'm not afraid to spend money. I want my house to look beautiful. I'm going to put up a high quality fence. This isn't chain link, this isn't, something that's going to look aesthetically unpleasing. And so I've done quite a bit of due diligence on this, and there is not another property in the city of Lockport that has the exact same conditions I do. There's 2 houses in Victoria Crossing that are on have a quarter side yard. They're not a side load garage. They don't have the property right behind them with unincorporated. We don't have comps on this. So I'm asking that everybody here kind of thinks how they would feel if they were in my shoes and just dropped this kind of coin on a home, only to have their neighbor come and start doing this. And I want to be able to continue to live here, but I can't deal with the 11:30 midnight quad and side-by-side rides and headlights popping up through my bedroom windows and all that good stuff. So I get it. Everybody can use their property how they want, and it's unincorporated, but I think most of us can agree when you do your due diligence and you're looking at a home. I went back over and over and over again. I didn't go back at 11:30, 11:45 and midnight. And so I'm just trying to play the hand I was dealt, and I'm hoping that you folks can help me accomplish my goals. So I appreciate everybody's time. Does anybody have any questions for me on anything I've said or anything with this request?
No, I mean, very straightforward. I've been over there twice now, once in the afternoon, once in the evening. There's always people parked on the street. Is that pretty common right there at that dead-end street?
Yeah, a lot of times I have teenagers, and a lot of times their friends are over after school, that sort of thing. So they'll park out in the street. Yes.
Okay, cool. And I completely understand that line of sight and wanting a privacy fence back there, especially on that south side.
Yeah.
And even if there was a transition on, I think the west side, I don't know. It's a very unique property. Nobody's developed over there on the other side. Drove around the neighborhoods. It's kind of a mishmash of different fences. I see cedar, plastic, aluminum. Some are at the proper setback. Some are definitely not at the proper setback. Even on some of the other corner lots. So I appreciate you actually going through the building process and doing this in the proper channels. So. Yeah, I think in my mind, just due to location, I'm okay with 6 foot because it's not really going to really cause any issues with traffic flow or any other problems. I don't know about the directly onto the, like, where the sidewalk's at. And personally, I'd like to see it set back 3 or 4 or 5 feet, something like that.
So it's
Not
my
necessarily.
excuse me, it's my understanding that the property line is 2.5 feet off the sidewalk. So when I said the property line, it's actually 30 inches off the
I was
sidewalk.
having a hard time. I had like a plat map program up, and it looked like it was right on.
Yeah, it's,
Sidewalk should be 1 foot, or the property line should be 1 foot off the back of the sidewalk. That's our standard detail, and that's how it would have been constructed.
according to the consulting company that I had come out and put pins in my yard and everything, they said it was 2.5 off the sidewalk. So I'm going by them.
Sure.
Okay.
Could have been an error, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm fine with 2.5. I didn't intend to have it right on the sidewalk, because I still would like to be able to run a mower down there and not have to use a
absolutely.
straight trim tool.
And that's always a safety concern with me when you have a high visual block right on a sidewalk. I know nobody's probably walking back there, but it'd be, kind of scary backing out if you get to see somebody that was walking on the sidewalk. So, yeah, that's all my comments. I think it seems pretty logical. You don't have any neighbors to your west right now. And just seeing kind of the varying heights and materials of the other fences on the same block, it makes sense to me.
The HOA allows for all these different materials, and I came from a neighborhood where we were told it just had to be wrought iron. So I'm willing to work within the boundaries of the HOA, and as I said, I think this is I could do a lot cheaper fence, but its aesthetics are very important to me. Right.
Question. You said you know the neighbors directly to your south, where the street that ends. Obviously, a lot of things that you're talking about are things that riding quads, and granted it's their property, it's unincorporated. But have you addressed it with them, and what are their comments? And I feel like we're doing this to accommodate things that they're doing that potentially they should or should not be doing.
Sure, but with all due respect, it's unincorporated, and I'll be honest, if I had 5 acres and somebody moved in right next to me, I would try and respect my neighbor, but I'm also going to try and use my property for my enjoyment. And I can tell you, Thursday nights are movie nights. They set up a projector, and they have a movie out there. It's great until 10:30 at night when it's not great. So they have a big family. There's lots of cars. There's lots of parties. There's lots of activity out there. There's a boat out there. So if you're into boating, you can do a little yard boating. It's honestly, it's an eyesore, and I'm trying to play nice with my neighbors. And I, said some things without being like, hey, but I've definitely let them know I don't appreciate the late night joyride. And I think there's times that, my neighbor's wife seems to reel them in. I hear the Bronco start up, and we're going to go ripping around the yard, and then the Bronco quiets down real quick. So then he chooses to take the side-by-side. I'm sure we've all been by one of these neighbors that, he's a nice guy. He means well. But I think he's young. He doesn't have any kids. And I imagine this is going to go on for a while. So I'd like to try and enjoy my property and allow him to enjoy his. And some of that, let's face it, a fence and trees, they will mitigate some noise. It's not gonna be a cure-all. But the fence and the trees will certainly help with the lights getting shined into my bedroom windows when they round the corner coming around the trail. So yes, I have said something, but again, I'm trying to kind of keep the peace and play nice with my neighbors.
I do have a comment here. So I agree with the staff report and the findings of fact in this case. I understand the applicant's desire to have more privacy here at this property, but I don't.
Commissioner, if I could just interrupt for a second. Mr. Chairman, really, this point for the public hearing is to talk to staff and ask questions of the applicant. If we're going to start debating or commenting about your findings of fact, as we get to that point, that should be after the public hearing when you're into the kind of the conclusory part of the hearing or the night.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I
directly
guess
for the applicant?
I have a question. I guess my question would be, what percentage of this is the back fence, and what percentage of this would be cause, you know what I mean? Like you're gonna get the back fence either way. So if we're eliminating 80 to 90% of the problem by just following the letter of the law, I guess what is that extra 15 feet along Fern, which you would have protection from your house on all sides at that point. You know what I mean? Like, I guess what's the...
Okay, so there's 86 feet along the south lot line.
Right, so
and that 86 feet, I need it all, because if it doesn't go all the way to my west property line, there will be a gap, a visual gap that I'm going to be able to see right into their driveway area there by the trail, and that's where the vehicles come around and the lights are going to get me. So that's like a critical piece of this, is having the entire south lot line covered by a privacy fence. The 59 feet to the west that runs down Fern, personally, aesthetically speaking, I think it'll look ridiculous transitioning to a 4-foot fence. However, if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. If we transition to a 4-foot or a 50% open fence, again, I will still try and accomplish the desired privacy by putting up arborvitae trees. So, and then it doesn't solve my security issue as far as, critters being able to get in and out and get my dogs, that sort of thing. So, let's see, your question was?
Well, no, so I guess what I'm saying is, could we pull up on the... Could you pull up the slide with the plat of survey, please? So I guess my question would be, not compromise the entire, sidewalk. Like if we could go here, but then allow the fence to go here or something along those lines to where you're really not necessarily violating the setback on the side while blocking the entire back, entire lot line in the back.
Let's just make sure we get direct question answer with our applicant, and then we can go into debate.
Is that something that you would be open to, or what would be the plan there? Would it be, we're not going to build a fence, trees, or, I'm trying to just get it.
I'll be honest, I would be open to any help I can get.
Yeah.
However, in my opinion, it's going to look wonky. I think it'll look weird having a fence, extend this way and then one come off.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not going to look aesthetically pleasing. And with that, what would I do if that was the case? Well, rather than bring it in the 15 feet, what I would do is I would come off that corner. If you allowed me to bring the south line all the way to my property line, I would come off that corner and probably transition to a 4-foot fence. I would stay 6 foot with 50% opacity, whatever I need to do in order to provide the maximum privacy. And then I would probably plant 15 or 20 arborvitaes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to kind of we do have the homeowners association is saying we're okay with it. The developer is not. And so, I'm trying to, but then there's nobody here to speak either. So I'm kind of trying to balance all the information that we have. And those are really the two outside exterior from yours or the city points of view are the homeowners association, hey, whatever, we're cool. Developer, hey, I think this would impact.
Those are the same two people, the homeowners association and the developer.
Yeah.
So, with that, I can't possibly understand how this could affect anybody besides me at this point.
Well, if they develop the other side of the street, their driveway now they're pulling out of their driveway and they're looking at a 6-foot fence instead of grass, right?
So, but do you honestly think that 15 feet is going to really matter at that point to that person that sees a fence, from across the street is 15 feet. Is it gonna be less invasive than if it was 2.5 feet from the sidewalk? I really, and how long off in the future is this that they develop it? I don't know, but,
But our job is to look for the
I
entire
understand.
future of the city, not just the next
No.
2 years or 5 years or whatever, right? So,
you guys shouldn't have to have this argument for a long time again, unless a developer puts the exact same situation in another neighborhood here in Lockport. And then, I think this can only show your willingness to work outside of the boundaries and not hold somebody's feet to the fire, because this is a unique scenario that we can all agree is different. It's different than anything else that exists out there. So again, I appreciate you guys even considering this, and hopefully we can reach an agreement.
yep. No, and then the portion about signing an agreement if they, if they push the road through and all that.
Absolutely.
It's great. It's also very tough to enforce if it's not part of the homeowners association declaration, or, there's no lien on the property or anything like that. That's just tough for us. You move in 5 years, that's great. Everything's fine. They develop, then the people in the back sell, it becomes another subdivision. Now we've got complaints that when the kids are walking to school, they're behind a 6-foot fence that's up right up against the sidewalk. And, again, this is not like a today issue. We're just trying
Sure.
to look at, our job is to look at every angle, possible.
So, and I get it, and at this point, my job is to look at what's best for me and my family.
Completely
And,
agree.
within the neighborhood, I will say, there's a lot of inconsistency.
Yep.
Tons of it. Somebody else mentioned the setbacks on the fences. It's wild. I've walked around with a tape measure. I've got a lot of ammunition on this. And, to give you just a little backstory on when I made an offer on my house, there was a sidewalk that extended all the way to the street. I have a side load garage. So when I walk out my front door and I walk to my mailbox, I'd like to be able to walk on a paved surface all the way to my mailbox. Well, from the time I made an offer on my house until the time it was accepted and we closed, the building department made my builder rip out that section of sidewalk. Now, I came back and I talked to you fine folks over here, and you agreed to let me put that sidewalk back in after I pointed out somebody on the other side of the neighborhood has a sidewalk just the same as what I would like to do. My point in this whole story is consistency. Now, the whole consistency thing, that can really bite me in the butt, because I don't want to be held to the consistent standard of people that have a side yard that don't have a street that terminates like I do. Yeah. But I think it's really important that, we try and recognize that it's wildly, the variations are wild. And over in Victoria Crossings, I mentioned that there's 2 houses. I can take you right to them. I was there right before I came. That it's probably like 70% opacity on a 6-foot high fence, and it was only 9 feet away from the sidewalk. Now, that's not 15, it's not 2.5 like I'm asking for, but I'm really hoping that, and I don't know, did other people, have they made these requests? I'm the type of person that if somebody tells me you can't do something, I would like to know why, especially if there's extenuating circumstances. Well, in this case, there is. So maybe those other homeowners, they just said, okay, if that's the rules, that's the rules. But I'm not like that. So respectfully, I'm asking that you consider my position here, and hopefully we can reach an agreement. So, thank you all.
Thanks, Rory.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other direct questions for Rory from the commissioners? Okay. I would ask, I don't see any other folks for public comment, so.
So Chairman, maybe we want to ask the applicant if he's seen the objection letter, because if not, we could read it into the record, or I know it was posted on our website or with the packet. He made mention of knowing who that person was, so I'm assuming he's seen it. I just want to make sure. Okay. Mr. Chair, would you like someone from staff or does someone on the commission want to read that into the record or just provide a copy? We have a copy here we can give to the applicant if he wishes, whatever the chair wants.
Rory, I have a copy. I can read it, or we can give you a copy. That's fine too. We have plenty of them. Here you go. Yep, you're welcome. Good to see you. My only other question is, have you contacted Will County relative to what goes on that may not be, as Commissioner Giorgetti mentioned, just not kosher with Will County standards, and have they been responsive at all? Yeah, from a Will County ordinance perspective, are they violating those ordinances? Have they been called on that? Any response from Will County? Okay.
I moved in July, and I hate to be that neighbor that's calling the police before I, bring it up with them. As I said before, I've made, subtle comments. I've made some not so subtle comments. I think they're aware, and I just get the impression that, we're going to try and respect our neighbors, but we're also going to use our land. We bought 5 acres to have all our family and friends over and to have a good time. And, we're going to do that. And more power to them. But, I want to try and protect myself from, some of that noise and nuisance.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure where this will go this evening, but
Sure.
Certainly there are Will County members that are from Lockport, folks that actually used to sit on this commission, that I think would understand the heartburn that you've got. So I wouldn't hesitate to reach out to those folks here in Will County and are entitled to what they can do as well.
I've got several good friends that are Will County PD, and I just, I haven't wanted to play that card yet because...
And I'm talking about Will County Board.
Oh, I see.
Will County Board.
Gotcha, okay.
Yep. Will County Board.
All right. Well, I
Because
appreciate
they
it.
oversee, all the departments at Will County and those that would enforce Will County ordinances outside of law enforcement, so.
Okay. Very good. I
Yep.
appreciate the tip.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Okay, Rory. They will still discuss amongst themselves. If you want to stay for it, they're going to discuss the case amongst themselves and come up with a recommended motion. That just if you want to be here for that, you can be. You're more than welcome to. Oh, you can stay right in here. Yeah. Yep.
Everything we do is completely open
Yep.
and
Yeah.
televised and everything else, so, yeah.
But as there are no other citizens from the public, I will ask if there is a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Garland,
Second.
second by Quinn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. Now, discussion. Further discussion.
I do have a comment. I'll go back to what I had started saying. I do agree with the staff report and the findings of fact for this case. And I do understand where the applicant is coming from as far as wanting to have more privacy with this fence. But I still have a hard time seeing a true hardship here that would justify a variance. The property can function just fine under the current zoning regulations that are already set in place. It seems like this would be more of a convenience to the applicant rather than an actual hardship here. So with that, I do not support this variance.
Mr. Chair, would it be helpful if I kind of remind the commissioners what the end goal is tonight here, or would that be helpful?
Yeah, and certainly. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. So you're here to find your own findings of fact. Staff has made their recommendations as to what their findings of fact are. You're welcome to look at all 7 of the factors that are not only contained in the city code, but they're directly out of the state statute as well. But whatever you decide tonight, whether it be to completely adopt the findings of fact of staff and to deny the variance, to agree with some of the, or adopt some of the findings of fact, but come up with some of your own on some of the other factors and deny or modify, or to completely reject at least 3 of the 7 criteria that staff had in their findings of fact and grant the variance. Everything that gets relayed out to the applicant has to be with your own findings of fact contained in that order. So typically, if you look at our code in the state statute, you have to issue a ruling within 35 days of the conclusion of the hearing. Technically, our hearing has already concluded tonight. The chair asked me before the meeting, what happens if I don't get a motion either way? Well, we would have to reopen the hearing and continue it because basically if there's not a motion either way, you're saying you don't know. And that means you need more information. But if you hear everything or if you've heard everything you've heard and you know which way you want to go, you have to find those findings of fact. A couple of things that the law says I want to tell you about that'll help you. The city administrator just asked me to put on a presentation to a joint meeting of the Planning Commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, and the City Council sometime next month to kind of talk about this whole procedural thing because there's not a lot of variances that are brought before this commission, and it would be helpful probably for both bodies to kind of get the Roberts rules kind of update kind of thing and all the procedure. But the code exists for a reason. And if you look at factor G, the proposed variations in harmony with the spirit and intent of this chapter, I always tell planning and zoning commissions throughout the state of Illinois, we don't rule on our feeling. Well, I feel the code shouldn't say that. Well, that's great, but the code does say that. But the law allows you to get around that through the issuance of a variance if you find those specific findings of fact. So if, for example, you're inclined to grant the variance, you've got at least 3 hurdles you're going to have to get over tonight based on the staff's findings of fact, that you would have to insert your own findings of fact to counter those. Or if you wanted to do something in between, one of the commissioners was mentioning that earlier, and I want to make sure that those conversations happen now, that you're deliberating as opposed to in a face-to-face conversation with the applicant. You might have to tweak all 7 of the factors to get to where you want to get. So that's really what you have to do. In order to vary from the code, you, the commission, have to enter your own findings of fact that will support whatever your end recommendation is. Now, the good news is, the only thing you have to do tonight, or unless we want to continue everything and reopen the hearing, would be to make the motion to either adopt findings of fact from the staff entirely and reject the variance, come up with your own and modify the request, or to approve it as applied for, in which case you need all those new findings of fact. What would typically happen is we have to give the applicant a ruling in writing within 35 days. And like I said, your order has to have all those findings of fact in it. Generally, we would adjourn the meeting tonight. I would work with the group of you to put together an order containing those findings of fact, unless they're exactly the same as staff, and then it's something I could kick out tomorrow. The commissioner and I, or the chairman and I, could meet, and he, the clerk, and would sign based on however you're voting on it be done. But if there's anything to tweak, we have 35 days to get that done and get it out to the applicant. So while you have to make a yay or nay decision today, or a compromise decision like one of the commissioners was saying, we don't have to have that final order done to make sure that the facts match up with what you're going to want them to match up with. But you need to have those discussions tonight so that we know which way we're going. Does that make sense? And I'm available to answer any questions you might have. Does that help?
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
So, commissioners, as Mike mentioned, we are bound to understand these findings of fact and agree with our staff and their findings of fact, or if we believe the findings of fact are different, we need to justify that. So if we're looking at something differently than staff have, I think that's where discussion should lie. And I would open that to all of you to let's have that discussion where we would disagree with how staff have looked at it and what's the different view and why.
I would say, just in my perspective, I like the idea of the 6-foot fence just to add the additional privacy. And yes, I mean, spot on with the fact that, yeah, you can put trees in. It's just going to take a long time to actually get any type of privacy off of that. I don't know about having it directly on the sidewalk, like, even at 2.5 feet, maybe something like that, or even 5 feet. And then if there is potential for annexation and a further development in the future, where then it would have to be back to the 15-foot space. And at that point, I think the residents' issues would be resolved anyways, because most likely there's not going to be four-wheelers and everything else going on as the development occurs. But it being essentially a dead-end road now, there's no flow-through, there's no visual impairment by anybody that's going to be driving in that area. And as far as the continuity of, I guess, visually what's in that that subdivision now, I would say I have no problem with it. I would like to see it probably move back to, I don't know, 5 feet off or something like that, as opposed to just 2.5, or directly close to it, just in case someone was walking on that sidewalk and were backing out of your driveway. But figure out a way, if it's something that runs with deed, that if there is an additional annexation and development of a property to the south in the future for a subdivision, then that has to be, I guess, enforced. But other than having like a deed restricted, piece on the actual deed of the property, I don't know necessarily how to do that or how to enforce that. Because if he sells it in 5 years and this development doesn't happen for
I tend to agree with Matt. I think rather than a 6 foot on the west side, I'd prefer to see the 6 foot extend to the southwest corner and then pick up into like a 4 foot ornamental, and then it can just be filled in with like arborvitaes or something of that sort. I'm torn on it. Do I believe it's like a true hardship? No, but I still believe that it is a hardship nonetheless. So I'd be open to a compromise of some sort that allows him to get that privacy fence to the southwest corner, but maybe do something more open along the west property line, and maybe push it back 2 feet or so from there, just to give a little bit more room. That could then be filled in with arborvitaes or something like that. That's kind of where I stand.
Yeah, kind of, going back to the 7 points, right? A through G, where do we agree, where do we don't, right? The main holdup in this one is probably G, right? It does not align with the current zoning, ordinance. That is correct. But there are locations in here, or terminology in here, particularly on B, the bottom 2 points. The proposed 15-foot extension of the privacy fence would have little to no impact in mitigating the poor visual character of the adjacent property. I tend to disagree with that. And then the bottom point, the expansion is intended to increase the amount of enclosed rear yard space, offering inconvenience to the applicant. That doesn't seem to be the main driver here, right? He's not trying to have a soccer field or whatever, right? I don't know. That's a little tough. So those 2 points. And then the other side of the coin on that is on A. Property could yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under regulations allowed in the R1 district. So if that said, hey, they've got to follow the letter of the law, it feels like the homeowner would still get the majority of the benefit that they're seeking, but fall short of their desired. How do we all feel about that, right? Those are kind of the 3 spots where I had hang-ups with this, and 2 of them are on one side and one's on the other, right? So I don't think that it's necessarily clear, and I think that, that's what puts us in a tough job, and that's why we have humans do this, right? We don't have AI just being like, hey, you must follow the law. So, I think that that's part of the discussion here, and so A, B, and G, I think, are the points that I want my fellow commissioners to kind of start discussing and try and align to that, because, feeling, as Mike mentioned, feelings are great, but does it align with these 7 points? And it to me, it doesn't on either way. I couldn't sit here and say completely yes, completely no, because of those 3 facts. And I think that's what we need to figure out tonight, is where we are on those 3 facts, and if there is a compromise in between that could potentially be recommended by all the commissioners or the majority of the commissioners here tonight, which would be what, 4 and 3, or is this 5 and 2, or what's the number that we need to get to, I guess, is also part of the discussion.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, what I,
Yes.
the other alternative that I would offer is if the commission is finding that the hardship is the condition of the south property line, and the screening of that south property line is what is the hardship that needs to be addressed. The other alternative is to take that rear 6-foot fence that is allowed to the sidewalk, and then the corner side yard fence should be able to meet whatever the requirement is, the 15 feet off at the normal 6-foot height, and it wouldn't violate the code. You wouldn't have an issue, and so you have, as opposed to a 47 or 54 foot long violation of the ordinance that would require the variance, the only thing that would need to be varied is the extension of the back 15-foot long panel. If that is the true hardship, is what is to the south of the property, which is what I have heard tonight is the hardship, is that condition of the south property. And so, you know, if the commission is willing to entertain recognizing that as a hardship, the resolution has nothing to do with the west fence, it has everything to do with the south fence. And so if the ability to resolve the screening of the south property, it would be better addressed to extend that south fence and really leave both the property owner now and in the future not breaking or not violating any of the ordinances except for the one 15-foot tall panel that would be on the south edge.
Question on that, would that require us to reopen a public hearing? Because technically you could make an argument that would, like, would the homeowners association have to give their recommendation on that, and would we have to open it up to people such as the developer or any other neighbors if we were to make any recommendation that's not exactly aligned in here?
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Sure.
Okay. No, the objector, you know, it's okay they submitted their objection in writing, but they had the opportunity to be here as well. And you heard quite a bit from the applicant tonight and from staff. So no, you would not have to reopen the hearing. At this point, as you've all very well pointed out, it's this time to, it's those 3 factors like you mentioned, like Commissioner Quinn mentioned. These are the 3 factors that are really going to be the hang-up. I will give you a little bit more guidance on that. There is a case out of the 3rd Appellate District, which is Will County, includes Will County, on undue hardship. So what we're looking for here is an area variance versus a use variance. Case law says that it's a little bit less stringent of a requirement if it's a area variance versus a use variance. They're not trying to put a bowling alley on this property. They just want to deal with the side setback. So really, it's a particular hardship as opposed to an undue hardship, but it's got to be unique to that parcel, which is spot on what Lance is saying. So what's unique to this parcel? The people to the south that are now clear cutting the trees, and they have a 4x4 path leading up to the property line. And so the particular characteristic of this parcel, and as the applicant pointed out, he's saying there's only 2 other similarly situated parcels in the city, is that south lot line. So that's one of the ways, like Lance is pointing out, you could, if you were to say, okay, we're going to change the findings of fact on point B. We're going to agree with the objector on point A or not. So we're going to find that it doesn't violate A, it does violate G. So you have to get through each of those, and you're moving towards that direction, whichever way you're going to end up on it. But that would be one way to deal with that, the particular hardship part of this application.
Thank you.
How do we feel about that south property line and a 6-foot solid fence, the entire length of that? And so as staff's findings say, furthermore, the proposed 15-foot extension of the privacy fence, particularly the majority segment not facing the rear yard, would have little to no impact in mitigating the poor visual character created by the previously cited conditions. So Lance, just to be clear, the majority segment not facing the rear yard, which is the side yard.
Correct. Yeah, so the way that this is written is it's related specifically to the corner side yard portion of the fence, not the rear fence.
The north-south piece.
Correct. The north-south alignment of it. And again, I guess I'll just reiterate, you can absolutely, in item B, you could say, the commission could find that the hardship is the condition of the south property, whether it's the use or enjoyment of the south property or the way that they clear cut the trees or whatever it is. And then it would be incumbent on you to find what the resolution to resolving that hardship is. And if you find that resolving that hardship relates to the entire side yard fence all the way up the street, that's one way you could do it, but you need to identify how that is impacted by the hardship. Or you could make an extension of the south fence, which would take it to the property line to screen the hardship that has been identified and that I'm starting to hear you recognize as a hardship. Obviously, totally your prerogative, but that would be the way to address the hardship itself. Having something run north-south doesn't really address a hardship that's happening south of the property, directly south of the property.
Now, by doing that 15 feet, or that extension of the sidewalk just on the south, I mean, does that come into play on the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return, assuming when they go to sell it, instead of having what would be maybe a good word for it, wonky, 15-foot, aluminum fence or whatever it may be, down the side that's inset from that. I mean, aesthetically, yes, that would probably not yield the same result on a sale if it were full private. Is that fair?
That has nothing to do with the hardship. I mean, if you do a slotted fence or a solid fence, that doesn't really relate to the hardship itself or what I'm hearing the commission look at as the hardship.
Okay.
Commissioner, are you asking about subsection A?
Yeah.
Okay, so reasonable return does not mean maximum return.
Right.
So when you're looking at what the code requires of all parcels in R1 for a side yard, is this parcel going to not have the same return that it should have? And it's not the maximum return. So yeah, of course, if we allowed 10-foot fences all around a yard, in floodlights, which we don't, that might make the property more marketable. Maybe it wouldn't. But what I'm saying is it a reasonable return? So that's what we get to look at. Okay.
The other thing for the commission to consider is the property directly to the west of this one runs east-west. And if the hardship is the same for that property, which it would, you may have a case in front of you that would say, well, I want to run my 6-foot fence all the way down the property line in front of my house and all the way down the sidewalk in front of my house and enclose my driveway, which is in essence the same request that's being made. It's just a different orientation of the property, but the hardship theoretically would be the same because it's the condition of the property to the south, it's the way in which they're using the property, things like that. And so those are the things that are the waterfall effect of recognizing something like this.
Lance, you are referring to the property immediately west, correct?
Yeah, the unbuilt parcel that is.
And that runs, okay, so the front of that lot would be on, what's the name of it?
It
Fern?
would face
on
Orchid.
Fern.
Yeah, it would face the stub street.
So their side yard would align well, that side yard would be the south property line. And that side yard then would want a solid fence from the sidewalk to their west property line.
And potentially in the front yard then, along the sidewalk.
If we said
If the
you
consideration
could
is the
have
same,
a solid fence up against the sidewalk for Rory's property,
if the reason for putting the corner side yard fence out to the sidewalk is the hardship to the south, the neighboring property to the west will have the exact same hardship. And then it would come in front of the commission that that person wants to put his fence all the way out to the sidewalk in his front yard by his driveway.
I guess you could make the same argument for the home that is directly north of Rory, that's a corner side yard. They may want, if, for some reason they don't get along with Rory, could ask for a solid fence the whole length of their side yard, so he wouldn't, or she wouldn't have to look at whatever's in Rory's front yard. Not that Rory's going to throw something in your, but the precedent is what we've got to talk about, that we would be setting, and understanding specific hardships that we agree with. Rory stated his case. We've listened to that. So what do we agree is a legitimate, and that we can say, yes, this is fact, and we believe it's fact that this is a specific hardship. We don't quite agree with staff on it, and it's very unique, and we're willing to set some precedent. Doesn't mean it will never ever be another precedent in Lockport, but it might be. So we just have to be careful, and I think Lance's point is a good point. The lot across the street, which whether it's 2 months, 2 years, 20 years, gets developed, and these people haven't moved, haven't changed their ways, nobody knows. We have to make that consideration, because you never know. Another case can come through that can be very similar, and we've got to be ready to back up our viewpoints on this.
That's why I guess I would suggest that if you're considering something, given the relationship across the street, allowing the corner side yard fence to go to the sidewalk, in essence, is also an allowance for the neighbor across the street to put a front yard fence up against the sidewalk, because it's the exact same resolution to the hardship that is being sought. So the applicant is seeking a resolution to the hardship by putting as much fence out to the sidewalk as possible, so that anywhere on his driveway that he's looking south, he will not see the adjacent neighbor. The same argument could be made because the driveway will face the exact same direction as what Rory's does, or the applicant's does. He could say, well, I want to not be able to see the south property in my driveway either, and so I'm going to put a front yard fence out, or I think that I have a hardship that would require that. The middle ground, if you're looking for a middle ground, would be to extend the south fence. And if the applicant would want to do, whether it's arborvitaes or whatever kind of plant material further north from there, that's certainly an alternative that we do not regulate trees so long as they don't overhang the sidewalk or things like that. That is certainly a possibility. Understand that it will take a little while to grow in for that condition, but extending the south property line fence, if you believe that the south property is a hardship, unique hardship, that's probably the least precedent-setting approach. Now, the neighbor across the street, when they build, may request a fence all the way along the south property line, inclusive of being in their front yard. which will likely trigger a variance that we would need to bring before the Plan and Zoning Commission. But it would not trigger a precedent for also putting one going north on the adjacent street.
So Lance, just to clarify, even if he just came in here asking for the south property line fence to be, like right now, if he would have to be 15 feet off of, even on the south property line, so either way it would be a variance.
Correct.
All right, I just wanted to clarify
It's
that.
just not nearly as precedent setting to run it all the way up the street. Then it is truly related to the hardship that I'm hearing you identify.
The other thing we have to look at is, it is currently a hardship, as we have heard reported from Rory. It doesn't mean that 2 months from now, the property owner wins the lottery and elderly lady lives there and doesn't ride these kinds of things around. Mm-hmm. We don't know.
Right.
Rory doesn't know. Rory could hope and pray for that, but you don't know. So
the challenge is identifying a hardship based on people's actions. That is not a legitimate hardship, because to your point, Scott, the person could die and an old lady moves in there next year and the 4x4s go away, the lights go away, there's nobody's music and all that kind of stuff. And then in essence we are saying that the hardship wasn't actually physical hardship, thereby vacating any reason for what you're doing. It was people's behavior, which I can tell you from our code enforcement department, there are many people's behavior around our city that could be improved, but it needs to be based on a physical hardship, whether that's the lot size, whether it's other things. I certainly could see the physical nature of removing the trees as being something that has created a unique hardship and the orientation of that lot, but I guess I would stay away from identifying a hardship that is somebody playing loud music or shining a light into my yard or anything remotely close to that, because that is a hardship that could change tomorrow. And so you're relying then on somebody's actions to create your hardship. It really needs to be something that is physical and difficult to change.
Yeah, Lance, you were going kind of where I was thinking, because you talked a lot about lights and things like that, but we have a lot of subdivisions that, come out of the T and there's back of houses and cars go in and out of subdivision and shine lights on the people's houses going out of subdivisions all the time. And, the lights itself, to me, we wouldn't say, okay, everybody that lives along, coming out of the subdivision could have a 6-foot fence for that reason, because of lights. So, to me, what it would be is, you mentioned a boat on their property, and what the other things on your property that's unique to this, that wouldn't be unique to anybody else if we deem that the condition of the property and not the other things that you talked about is the hardship, to me. That's where I was trying to make a determination of, is that the hardship that we're doing? Because I don't think, like I said, lights and stuff like that, anybody can say, there's cars coming out of subdivisions and there's lights shining into my bedroom all the time, and that's part of, living in a public area.
And those are reasonable code enforcement things. So if the music goes above Will County's decibel requirements, if the glare goes above Will County's light ordinances, those are all code enforcement things that the county can take action on. If the music is playing too loud, all of those things are items that code enforcement typically takes care of. We manage neighbor disputes over lights, we manage neighbor disputes over sound, pets, all kinds of stuff that we get into on a relatively irregular basis that don't rise to the point of a physical hardship. that would qualify it for a variance. So I guess that would be my suggestion to you, is that this really shouldn't be based on activity. It needs to be based on some sort of physical characteristic or physical condition of the property in and of itself, and resolving what that is the mission of utilizing a variance to resolve a problem that has been identified. So if you would want to change the finding of fact related to what the hardship is, you can identify that, change that finding of fact to basically say that the hardship, the unique hardship in this particular case, is the condition or removal of trees or things like that on the property to the south, and the resolution of that we believe is a reasonable resolution is X, whatever X is. And our guidance to you as staff, because we have to deal with the outcomes of whatever these are on a daily basis into perpetuity, is that you want to set as few precedents as you can. There are always unique circumstances. There are always unique cases, and even the city creates some of those cases. But in this case, if you're looking for a hardship and you want to change the findings of fact to reflect that hardship, totally fine with us. We just need to identify what that is, and then the resolution that the Plan Commission feels comfortable with, that will help the applicant resolve that situation. And it's totally reasonable, even though this case is specific to the corner side yard fence. Extending that back fence to the side is in essence still the corner side yard fence, but it is a significantly less impactful precedent-setting item than moving the entire fence along the west property line.
So having had this discussion and explanation of things with Lance and Mike, any further development of our thoughts and opinions on current findings of fact as staff has listed here? We can keep talking. We can talk as long as we need to. That discussion needs to occur. One thing I'll mention is I'm not a fan of saying, well, if you do this now, and this property is purchased and developed, then I'll move it back at that time, because this property owner could win the lottery, move to Florida, somebody else moves in, then this property is purchased and developed, and you have to move your fence. I'm not moving that fence. No way.
Yes,
It's here.
as the leader of our code enforcement department, I would highly recommend that it not be a affidavit or something else that gets recorded on the property, because if the applicant is not living at the home whenever something like that happens, that property owner will inevitably fight us tooth and nail and not move this fence, and so it ends up in a court case, and that's always unpleasant.
And as the person that would have to litigate that, I would highly recommend against it as well.
Right.
If they're given a variance, you got to kind of consider it it's in perpetuity,
Right.
because trying to get and claw that back later is next to impossible.
So would there be a general consensus that a 6 foot privacy fence across the back is reasonable?
Yes, I would agree with that, that the 6 foot along the south property line, I'm very open to. North-south, I think, like, not including that won't get you 100% of the way, but it'll get you quite a ways on the hardship, so yeah, I'm very open to the south and that full 6 foot going to the southwest corner. I'm open to, discussion on the north-south piece along the west property line.
And Lance, on clarification, the north, the as is, the north-south, and then the back west to east, where like the gate would be. Our current code is saying that all of that would have to be 4 foot with. Let me just make sure I just read this correctly. That would be 4 foot open design fence, the entire west side, and then the entire north side of the fence that is being proposed to fit code. Would be 4 feet, 15 feet off of the thing, and then the north part that will be connected from like the house to the, basically from here to here, and then all the way up and down here. The current code would say that both of those 4 feet open face, 15 feet setback from the.
No, if it's set back the appropriate height, I believe it would be 6 feet. You can do it 6 feet. I believe that's right. No. This is where
Just
Alex-
reading from point 2 on yeah, I was just reading from point 2 on the recommended motion.
That was my understanding, Aaron, was that that side yard would have to be 4 foot open design, no closer than 15 feet to the property line. That's what I.
And we think that you're talking about where the gate is. I don't think there's a restriction on access at the side yard. North-south.
Theoretically, the back would be 6 foot fully enclosed. The front part would be 6 feet, 4 feet. Fully enclosed.
Six.
But then the side would have to be
And the intention of that is, as cars would come to an intersection, views are not obstructed.
Right.
But that is the reasoning behind the side yard requirements for fences
Correct.
and setbacks.
Sorry, as worded in point 2. Confirm. Okay.
Now, Lance, if arborvitaes are planted within that 0 to 15 feet, there's no restrictions on that.
No. Correct. We just don't restrict it because it's a growing material that is impossible to manage in any way, both width, height, and everything else.
Do we want to open things back up here to the public?
I don't know how
probably
this
try
works,
to.
so I might just be talking out of turn.
I understand where you're coming from. So, but that's why I asked the question. We can put foliage that you can't see through in different areas. People can go plant what they want, and it can grow however it grows. On the public portions of the right-of-way, sidewalks to the street, there are limitations on vegetation in that public way.
Oh yeah, grass.
It's the fences that
Correct.
we have our zoning requirements and standards for. So it's what we have to live with here. Unless we change things in the zoning code, which we're not going to do tonight. So, so again, commissioners, we need to live, to understand the requirements by which we are assigned to live within. And as Lance said, where there are peculiarities that are very unique, conditions that aren't transient, for the most part. That's probably the most elbow room that we have to exercise variations, dealing with unique circumstances. But we have to go back to these findings of facts because that's where Mike goes from a legal perspective. And that's how municipalities get into legal issues.
Yeah.
Where we could potentially have to spend a lot of money on legal issues. Our findings of facts, those are the most important things that we have to pay attention to with our jobs. And we got to be right on with this and defendable. So
I think that
I think you have to have it a little further away from you. There you go.
so.
Very good.
The houses to the east here, could they have 6-foot fences? They could.
Yes,
So they may already have 6 foot, and we're just extending that one because it's a side yard.
correct.
To 6 foot. Okay. So these would have no issues. It'd be this property there that would potentially on that. Okay. Thank
Correct. Yeah, it's different for the west property because it's different orientation. If it was facing the same direction as the other properties east of the applicant, they would be able to have a full rear yard fence just like those properties to the east of the applicant are able to have. But because it is facing east-west, and the driveway would come off of the north-south street there, that is what creates a differentiation or a different condition than the properties east of the applicant.
Okay. So it would be creating another issue if we did allow the 6 foot going. Okay.
Yes.
And interestingly, if the property immediately to the west, farthest south, backs up to Gouger, that whole spur is to accommodate those two lots and driveways for those two lots. Have to move the wood pile, but there's just a very legitimate reason for that spur extending to the point that it does.
Correct. I mean,
With potentially, no intention to ever go south, but it could.
yeah, I mean, as many of the commissioners know that have looked at subdivisions that we have reviewed and approved in the past, we always require as a part of our design guidelines stub streets that connect to the adjacent properties. Because the last thing that we want to do is create another broken arrow that can't drive in between areas, and everybody comes out to the main roads on the outside without having that access to be able to differentiate their travel patterns and lessen the congestion on the surrounding streets.
Chairman, if I might add also, I think you're starting to see too that these 7 factors all kind of relate to one another. So, for example, the case out of the 3rd district I was talking about, if you were to find, as Lance is seeing as well, that we're going to call this a hardship, the case law calls it a particular difficulty when we're talking about an area variance versus a use. You could say, for example, this eyesore to the south, for example, with the clear cutting the trees, causes a particular difficulty for this property. And that the solution to that, as Lance has pointed out, might be to allow that solid fence to go all the way to the lot line. Now you still have to touch with A and G. You could say, and if they weren't able to block that vision, we don't think they'd get a reasonable return on their property. Now you've touched on A. How do you get to G? You could say it's within the intent and spirit of the code, because the code's really designed, as Commissioner Garland mentioned, to look at the sight line. It's a stub street that's not connected to anything right now. We're taking the risk that there's not going to be a development anytime in the near future. But if we started getting to the north-south, that might be an entirely different equation you're looking at. So you could tie those 3 things together like that, and you really should be thinking that way. We can't just say, all right, there's a particular difficulty which satisfies the undue hardship section of B. We still have to talk about A and G. But that's when I said we can have a motion tonight, once you make your decision, and then we can tweak the order to make sure it matches what you're talking about.
Are we all in general, like, what's everybody's feelings on the south property line? Kind of break it apart from just the south and then consider the west side separate.
Yeah, south, I'm good with 6 foot all the way across the block. I believe his consultant had said something along the lines that has to go there to yeah, whatever. Yeah, the side yard is essentially discussion.
Bring your mic
15
closer.
feet in. And now is that 15 foot off the sidewalk or the lot line? All right, is it 15 foot off the
Property line.
Property line.
Yeah.
17 or the distance or the number it's 30 feet, 15 feet.
So in essence, if somebody doesn't have 15 feet in their corner side yard, it's the half point, and that's what that note is about in our code. If they have 15 feet, then it's the 15 feet. And that's why you may see varying setbacks on some fences, is that they don't have 15 feet in their corner side yard. I don't know the particular situations across the city, but that is one of the reasons why there may be some variation, is based on where the house is located. We get a lot of that, especially in the older section of town, because the houses are closer, further away, everything in between to the lot lines.
Mike, would you repeat what you said about case law and the terminology from hardship to what was the term
So
you used, and then
Practical difficulties.
practical difficulties, and you mentioned was nuisance part of that? Did you
No.
say nuisance?
No, in that case where they decided that a area variance is less stringent than a use variance, it was a weird one where a gentleman raised cranes, the bird cranes, and wanted to put these shelters in the yard. And there were only 2 places where he could put them where they would be within the code, based on the layout of his lot. And the neighbors didn't want to be looking at these shelters for the cranes. What the appellate court finally said, because the zoning board of appeals there denied the request for the variance, said, nope, there's 2 spots on your lot, you can put it. Well, when they went back and looked at the interplay between those factors, like I'm talking about, they said, yeah, but he's going to have to tear down an oak grove in order to put it in spot here. He's going to have to move these trees to put it here. Now that you're making more of an eyesore to get within those 2 areas on his lot where he could have those shelters. So instead, the appellate court said, keeping within the spirit, G, harmony with the spirit and intent of the code, and, they wanted to allow the raising of the birds. It's a protected bird, so that we got A okay, it wouldn't offend A. We're going to allow the variance because to say he has to do it within the code is making more of a problem than we're creating. So instead of saying undue hardship, because I don't think anyone would say not being able to put some shelters for birds in your yards an undue hardship, but it is a practical difficulty for this particular parcel the way it was laid out. But it also gets to Lance's point about it's not about the behavior of the neighbors or any other person's behavior. It was the unique characteristics of the property. So if you were to say that the unique characteristic of this property with the eyesore to the south is a practical difficulty, we still want to use the phrase undue hardship because that's in our code, but I'm letting you know case law says we can look at it as a little bit less stringent than a use variance if you wanted to put in a bowling alley. You could then say being able to block that view to the south would allow him to have a reasonable return, as Mr. Garland brought up, on his property, and we're really not offending someone walking on the sidewalk up against a 6-foot fence by not allowing the north-south extension. So we really we're still within the intent and the spirit of the code in subsection G. So you can tie those 3 things together. It's when we start getting into, as Lance mentioned earlier, now we have a unique situation in the property, which is the eyesore, and again, the condition of the property, not the behavior, to the south. And now we're going to address it by allowing a 6-foot fence against the sidewalk on the west. That's a little bit less defensible, as the chairman has pointed out, if we were to have to defend this in court.
It would be an interesting contemplation that the homeowners association could extend a solid fence across the end of that spur if they didn't like what was on the other side, could they? That's kind of on them, or is that public property that,
It would be in public right of way,
Yeah.
so
public
we-
right of way,
we-
so they
we
wouldn't be
likely
able to?
wouldn't allow for somebody to do that.
Okay.
We could certainly consider it. There may be some plant material that they could put up there or something along those lines. But something that is more permanent, like a fence.
Not so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
we-
Just thought I'd,
Yeah,
just
no,
trying
no.
to think.
It becomes a basketball court really quick, when you do all that.
Well, good fences make good neighbors. If the neighbor to the south wanted to do it on his property
Yeah,
line,
right.
that would
Yeah.
be something that would be conceivable.
Yeah, because it would be his property, not public right of way.
Yeah.
If he wanted to install something like that on his, what would be north property line, that would be totally within his purview to do.
All right, commissioners.
So,
Let's,
you know,
let's keep grinding
I,
here.
I, in the interest of, you know, I think we've explored the majority of the angles here, and I do think we have some common ground for the most part. I'm going to stop short of making a motion, but what I will do is to my fellow commissioners kind of make a proposal that I think kind of does a decent job of at least starting the discussion of getting to final wording here. And so, you know, and this is a combination of all of the points that we've discussed. I would propose allowing the 6-foot fence, solid fence, all the way to the property line, therefore granting essentially point 1 that is in there from staff recommended, but point 2 saying no and allowing still to go even along the sidewalk. So your 15-foot is extended, but if your north-south was your 4-foot, you know, see-through wrought iron, whatever we want to call it, from here to here and here to here. So there's no issue with people on the sidewalk with safety. There's no vision issue if this eventually becomes a drivable street that goes through. It does allow the nuisance, or the, what is the term? Yes, on the south end, it allows there still to be kind of a safety type fence, 4 feet, whatever, see-through, consistency here. Does that solve everyone's, you know, thing? I don't know. I would be okay with that. I know several areas in town. The house just north there on Jade Court, they do have the 4-foot wrought iron looking along their property line that's essentially right here. You know, the homeowners association has already given their blessing. That is my kind of proposal. I'm one of 7 people here, so we'd all have to kind of agree on the wording. That's what I would propose, where I think it kind of fits within the letter of the law and also the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish in terms of the nuisance.
So just so I understand what you're saying, so you would say that the 4-foot fence would also not be in conformance with the code? You would want it to be out by the sidewalk?
I think I would be okay with that given the surrounding fences that are already existing in this neighborhood and throughout town. I know on my street there's some fences like that along Division, etc. I would be okay with that. I would not be in support of a full 6-foot all the way along the street, or even without the 15-foot setback, to be quite frank.
So just to be clear, that 4-foot fence relates to the hardship how?
I think you then get into the some of the other points, which would be it doesn't impact safety, it doesn't impact you know, the visual character. I think it's in conformance with the intent. I don't necessarily think that it's intended to increase the amount of enclosed rear yard space. I think it kind of the visual character, continuation of the fence not having, you know, this going all the way here and then you're kind of in the middle. So
What's the
that's
difference
But
if
I guess-
the fence is on the side, you know, next to the sidewalk, or 1 foot from the sidewalk, or 15 feet off the property line if it's 4-foot see-through? What is the difference from a safety standpoint? I mean,
So again,
I mean, to stay within the code, why not have it 15 feet off, and he could, and he could have that 15 feet to plant arborvitaes all the way up.
No, I think that's what we need to get to. So I just wanted a starting point.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is, in that case, if you wanted to make that recommendation, it needs to be tied to the hardship itself, and if the hardship that's being identified is the property to the south, having a 4-foot see-through fence isn't doing anything to relieve that hardship because of its unique nature. And so that one is more difficult. The items that you read off are reasons why you wouldn't allow a variance.
The arborvitaes solve the problem,
Yes,
and those arborvitaes can be planted between that 0 and 15 feet
correct,
to screen what's going on
correct.
to the south, and 4-foot fence to keep kids and dogs in, whatever,
Right.
people out. It's 15 feet in, and that's all within code,
Correct.
and we're not dealing with any variances there. Not
Yep.
setting any precedent that
Right.
bites us in the butt down the road somewhere else.
And again, I would say that if you want to extend the back 6-foot fence to the property line, that would be a variation on the corner side yard setback for that portion of the fence. But it is a significant, it's related directly to the hardship that I'm hearing you're identifying, as opposed to the rest of the fence to the north. A 4-foot fence, irregardless of whether it's at the sidewalk or 15 feet back, unless you're a child under 4 feet, you would be able to see anything to the south. So it's not really related to the hardship. It's a convenience at that point.
So Chairman, it's not appropriate for this point for comments from the
Yeah.
audience anymore.
So Lance, let me ask the question. The side yard fence, 15 feet off of the property line in a corner side yard still has to be see-through or cannot be solid. What if it's 16 feet off? That side yard, nowhere in that side yard can you have a solid fence?
Correct.
Okay. Nowhere in the side yard.
Now,
from the
if
house to the sidewalk.
and this would be new for me, but I'll put it out there, and Mike, you can tell me whether this is off base or not. If you wanted to change your variance to allow for a 6-foot fence in that corner side yard because of the hardship, as opposed to the 4-foot fence, that could be another route that's directly tied to the hardship itself. I'm not saying whether or not that is a good or bad solution. The fewer, smaller, less precedent-setting variances that the commission can grant, the better off it is for you in the future. Like I said, I honestly think the perfect precedent that this would set is the neighbor directly across the street. And most homeowners, I'm not sure if the applicant would feel this way, if multiple neighbors across the street enclose their entire front yards with a 6-foot fence, it would lead to a pretty unsightly neighborhood.
All right, commissioners, let's keep grinding here.
So essentially, it's coming back to the same thing. 6 foot across the entire back, out to the sidewalk. 4 foot, 15 foot in, and then, yeah, I mean, I guess we just continue that same 4 foot from where the gate is.
I actually think you're correct. I think you're correct. I will verify that. Um, I totally understand.
Okay, sorry. You know, if I got to do 15 feet and a 4-foot, you know, semi-open fence, I'll forget it.
Yeah.
I'll figure this out some other way.
We will confirm that with you
Okay.
tomorrow, to make sure that you understand what you
Okay,
have available.
that's
to you.
if, you know, based on everything we discussed tonight, if I could get the back south lot line covered 100%, 6 feet privacy fence, I do think it would look strange having the fence down the west lot line. I think it would look strange having it 15 feet off the property line, so it would, you know, kind of be forming a T with the back fence. I think that would look strange, but I would prefer that look and to have a consistent fence line. I think it looks strange when I drive through a neighborhood and I see fences changing. So that's just my opinion, but I'm trying to accomplish this. So
Yeah, the way that we typically handle is we have a requirement for a transition panel. So when you go from a 6-foot to a 4-foot, there's a requirement for an angled transition panel that would take that down. That's typically the way that we require that to be done.
So, Lance, so what we need to look up in the bulk standard code is corner side yard, the fence that is 15 feet off of the property line can be 4 feet or 6 feet,
I would not concern yourself with whether it's 4 feet or 6 feet.
whether it's see-through or solid.
I wouldn't concern yourself with that. I would say that the decision before you tonight is whether or not that should be 15 feet and follow the code or not. We will resolve the
Okay.
height and the condition of the
I've got it right
fence.
here. Fences located in the required corner side yard shall not exceed 4 feet in height and shall be of open design unless the fence is located 15 or 1/2 feet or 1/2 the distance. So, with the
It could be
applicants-
6
yeah.
feet.
So
Yes.
it could be 6 feet if it's 15
Yes.
feet back.
Yeah.
okay.
If you wanted to put it within that, then it's gotta be 4 feet in open design.
Yeah.
But if he goes 15 feet back, it can be 6 feet, it can be closed design.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
So from there, commissioners, so if our applicant had a 6-foot high solid fence, 15 feet off the property line all the way to the back, and then, well, what does the wing wall do? If we've already got a 6-foot high fence that goes north.
Yeah, I think it's still, you know, it's still technically, like when they're pulling in, you're pulling onto the street, you could say that it's still, you avoid that noise, you avoid that view into the back. When you're pulling into your driveway, if you're pulling outside the fence or whatever, that would be probably the argument, I'm guessing, in that case. Right? You're shooting hoops, you're doing whatever in your driveway, you still would want that blocked if the, per the applicant.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's kind of what that would show, and I think that's a fairly easy argument to make in continued precedent. Like if they developed the house across the street, and they had their normal front yard because this is all up to code, they wouldn't be able to get a giant fence here. But if they asked, hey, I know that I can't have a fence that goes in front of my house, but I can go all the way to here so that I don't have to see this back here, that would theoretically be the same precedent that we'd be setting now, right? And I think everybody would probably be okay with that.
So 6 feet across the back, 15 foot in, 6 foot tall, I mean, not hard, his hole.
I think that's what I'm hearing. 6 feet across the back, south side, everything else is the code. And that code is if you're 15 feet up, you can have 6, if you want, everything else is the code.
Visual wonky pieces, the the wing wall, but it still provides the coverage that he needs to relieve him of
I think it's a
said
fair compliment. And of the site, because to me, that's the hardship, the site,
Yeah, yeah, just looking
not
at
the
yeah,
lights and, yeah,
old boat.
the boat.
So- So if that's the general consensus, and I'm not saying whether it is or isn't, you can make that motion with that condition, and then Mike can modify the findings of fact based on what we have heard from you tonight, and that will go back to you, and then the chairman and our clerk will sign for that once we get concurrence.
So Mike, in general, tying A, B, and G together, commissioners would find that the property may not yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the regulations allowed in the R1 district.
So that finding of fact would be specific to the south lot line. We would say
For
that
the
because
south
of
lot
prop-
line.
Right. If the commission's ruling were to deny a variance on that west fence line, because it's gonna be 15 feet back, and they are allowed 6 feet tall, stockade style or aluminum, solid fences, then that part of the variance request is denied. The part of the request, which would be the 15 westernmost feet of the south lot line, is granted. And I would tweak the findings of fact based on what you're saying, if that's what your motion is gonna be tonight. And I could work on the wording of that while you're continuing to talk to see what might be the best way to make that motion.
I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah, I mean, that works for me. You know, Jordan, Luis, I don't know where you guys are necessarily at. It sounds like probably 4 to 5 of us would be in agreement there.
So there are two motions in front of us that we can approve or deny, and we can adjust the language as
Right,
needed.
and again, those are
in
just
those.
recommended, they are not motions that you would make.
And Mike mentioned that as those are acted upon and based on what he has heard, would work on the language and the findings of fact to align with our opinions here as these are acted upon, approved, denied, whichever way this goes.
I'm working on a motion, if that's the way you're gonna go, you can continue to discuss, that would kind of fit those two things. The south lot line and then the west lot.
Do we even need to touch on the west lot line?
You would deny you have to
We need
rule
to-
on it, yes.
we
You
need
would
to deny.
If that's the way you rule, you would deny the variance request for the western lot line.
Okay, gotcha.
So I'm just going to ask, I'm going to call to question item 2 on the motions that are mentioned here, and ask if there is a motion to deny the 6-foot privacy fence from a 4-foot open design fence within the corner side yard, 0 to 15 feet, based on the findings of fact of the commission.
I'll make that.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have to deny the first motion.
I'll wait. I'll repeat, and I'll wait.
Building that into it.
So I would let him read the recommended motion, so that you have that clearly described.
See if you think I'll read it to see if you think that works. this could be a motion if that's the way you're inclined to go, a motion to approve the variance request to allow a 6-foot fence, and I'll put closed, what was it worded? Closed design on the south property lot line to continue to the southwest corner of the lot, thereby granting 15 feet of variance for the westernmost 15 feet of the south lot line, and to deny the variance request for the fence on the western lot line.
On the western lot line.
That's,
That's clarity to what I said.
That's what your ruling is, that motion would work, and then I would tweak the order for you and circulate it. But
Yes.
it would allow the applicant to know what your ruling is going to be. I would just be putting the legalese in for you before we have the commissioner sign, or the chairman sign it.
Would you read that one more time?
Sure. Motion to approve the variance request to allow a 6-foot closed design fence on the south property line to continue to the southwest corner of the lot, thereby granting 15 feet of variance for the westernmost 15 feet of the south property lot line, and to deny the variance request for the fence on the western lot line.
because there is no variance inside that lot.
Would anyone like to move that motion?
I'll make that motion.
So moved by Garland. Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Second by Quinn. Kathy, roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay.
Mike, thank
Well,
you.
Thank you, Chairman. I would caution all of you, I'll do an email to all of you Friday morning, because I'm on the road tomorrow. Just don't reply all. This is another Open Meetings Act reminder. If you think I've mischaracterized something in your findings of fact, shoot me an individual email back. Once I've kind of congealed all those into one nice meatball, I'll call the chairman and the clerk, and he and I can get together to have that signed and mailed off to the applicant. But at least know what their ruling's going to be. Thank you. Fair enough? No, you can put it in the minutes, but, this? Yeah. I can make it cleaner for you if you want. Yeah, okay.
That concludes the public hearings. We move to new business. I don't see any items. Old business, don't see any items. Any other citizens to be heard? I don't see any.
Looking at you, Rory.
Okay. Thank you, Rory. Chairman's report, we have a meeting in November that will
Yes.
be
A large meeting.
full docket.
Serenity Landing will be on your agenda. So a large development. The other thing that will be on your agenda is there is one other case. It's eluding me right now, but there will be one other case. It's a commercial case, and we will have another fence variance for your viewing and enjoyment.
I feel a cold coming.
And Lance,
I would remind everyone, I believe, Alyssa, you sent an email out to this crowd about training for planning zoning commissioners, 7 p.m. on October 29th, I believe. And if we want to sign up for that, we need to let Lance
Both of us know.
Both of you know.
Lewis has signed up for that already. I've signed him up for that. Alyssa will also be joining. If any of the other ones would like to join, it is the 29th from 7 to 9, I think. Online meeting. It's not in person, but it is live, and there are no recordings available because they prefer that people be there live.
It's the ALA?
This is through APA.
Or APA.
Yep, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. American Planning Association, the Illinois chapter, puts this on. They do it annually. It's Plan Commissioner training. You know, honestly, a lot of what we have covered here tonight is parts of these things, is to help train you all up to understand kind of the importance of all these different components that are part of your staff reports, and also how you deliberate on projects as well. A lot of what we talked about tonight is also related to special use permits. So you'll see in our staff reports for our special use permits, those could be a special use permit for a planned development, those could be a special use permit for a drive-through, they could be a special use permit for a number of different things. It will always have findings of fact in the staff report that we would have the same conversation as we do now. Probably not nearly to the extent of what we have, because most of those are either fairly standard or they're readily accepted. But the same process, and this is honestly what Mike was talking about related to our training with a joint group of both the Plan Commission and the City Council, is all about. Because we really want to try and get away from the I like this, or I don't like this, or I'd rather have you have this over here. You know, a lot of those kinds of comments are really just not applicable in a setting where you are legally trying to defend your decision, and like something or wish it was somewhere else is very difficult to defend. And so that's why we have those findings of fact. That's why they're always in your packet.
And I would recommend, if you can attend, Lance signed me up for one last month or two over noon hour, and I found them very insightful.
Yeah.
It was worth the time if you can do that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll sign you up.
I don't have anything else. I'm going to let staff introduce Alyssa more formally. Any other commissioners? Anything to report?
Just confirming, next meeting is Wednesday, November 12th here.
Yes.
And is December finalized, and is that back at the old office, or do we know about December yet? Just wondering.
We will not be back at City Hall in December.
Okay.
And that is actually a question point. I was going to bring it up under staff report. This building is occupied on Wednesday in December, on the Wednesday that we would regularly have our meeting. They have requested if we could do our meeting on Thursday that week instead of the Wednesday. The Tuesday night is jammed as well. Here they were not expecting us to be using this facility as long as we are. So they have requested that. You do not need to respond right now. We're obviously 2 months away. But if you could look at your calendars and let Alyssa and I know whether or not you are available for that. We obviously always want a quorum because otherwise it's useless to have the meeting. Whatever that Thursday is, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Lance.
The other thing I'll bring up under staff report, obviously introducing you to, for those of you that haven't met her individually, Alyssa JG is our new city planner. She joined us about a month ago, right after what would have been your October meeting, or your September meeting, had we had one. But we have really enjoyed having her in the office. She's been here for about a month already, and already getting right into the work and working with Alec on a lot of our permit cases and doing zoning plan reviews. So we have a number of projects in the queue. The gas station is the other one. So the 151st Street gas station is the other case that will be next month, inclusive of some recommended changes to our bulk standards related to attached single-family homes. I'm sure many of you remember the wishes that I have had over the last couple of subdivisions that we have approved, that we had aligned our bulk standards to reflect the way that townhomes are platted today. We've talked about that, allowing for patios on the back and the recognition the lot lines are 5 feet outside of the building and not 50 by 120 like a normal lot. We engaged a consultant for that work. We will have a recommended series of motions as well as all the research that backs all of that up for you in October. So between Serenity Landing, the gas station, recommended code changes, and a fence variance, it will be a very full November meeting.
We look forward to that, Lance.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I'll offer from a staff report standpoint is based on everybody's feedback, we are going to move the 2026 meetings to Wednesday nights. So it will be the second Wednesday of every month and not the second Tuesday of every month.
I already know I'm booked for that December meeting.
Okay.
That Thursday meeting.
Okay. So long as we have a quorum,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. That's all we have from a staff standpoint.
Thank you, Lance. And in my conversation with Alyssa, if you see her name and you aren't sure how to pronounce it again, just remember Commissioner Giorgetti's initials, JG.
Yeah, right.
Welcome, Alyssa. Glad to have you. With that, I would ask if there's a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Garland, second by Quinn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you for working hard tonight.
Thank you for that.